She smiled and locked the door. What happened echoed across the station. The space station Vanguard hovered in the vast emptiness of space, far from the safety of known worlds. Built as a neutral hub for intergalactic diplomacy, trade, and cultural exchange, it was a place where species from across the galaxy could meet and talk without fear of violence or war. Captain Daniel Hayes, a veteran of countless space battles, was no stranger to the kinds of creatures and political tensions that filled the station's halls. His job was simple: protect the station and the important people who visited. But today felt different. It started when Lady Acilia, a high-ranking diplomat from the Kairos Dominion, stepped onto the Vanguard's docking bay. She had arrived aboard a sleek silver ship, her beauty and presence captivating even the most hardened of station officers. Her arrival had been a mystery to everyone. The Kairos were known for their advanced technology, but their presence on the Vanguard was unusual. They kept to themselves, a powerful but secretive race that didn't often mix with others. The Kairos Emperor, her father, was a man of few words, a ruler who governed his empire with an iron fist and a mind that was as unpredictable as the stars themselves. Lady Acilia was different from her father. She was calm, poised, and graceful. When Daniel had first met her, her eyes had been full of warmth. Her smile was gentle, almost like a soft breeze on a hot day. It was hard to believe she was the daughter of such a powerful and dangerous ruler. But Daniel had learned long ago that people were not always what they seemed. The eyes could hide a multitude of secrets, and Lady Acilia's were no exception. She was here on an important diplomatic mission, the details of which were known only to a handful of people. Daniel, as part of the station's security detail, had been assigned to ensure her safety and provide any assistance she might need. The assignment had seemed like a simple task at first. Lady Acilia was just another visitor, and Daniel had no reason to believe this mission would be anything but routine. That was until the moment she smiled and locked the door to her private quarters. It wasn't an ordinary smile, nor was it an ordinary gesture. Daniel had gone to check on her, as was his duty, but when he reached her quarters, he found the door securely shut and a faint humming sound coming from within. It was a sound that didn't belong in a room like this, subtle, almost imperceptible, but undeniable. It felt like a pulse of energy, a ripple in the air that seemed to move through him and settle in the pit of his stomach. The door had been locked, but not just locked in the usual way. There was something different about the way it had been sealed. Daniel could feel it in the air around him, as if the room itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. He stood there for a moment, uncertain of what to do. Was this a diplomatic move? Was she simply preparing for her meeting with the station's council? Or was there something more going on? He knocked once, twice. No answer. The silence was thick, oppressive even. He tried the door again, gently pushing it, but it didn't budge. This wasn't the kind of lock that could be undone by a simple twist of a key or a combination. It felt ancient, as though it had been crafted by hands long gone. A chill ran down Daniel's spine, though he couldn't explain why. Perhaps it was the stillness, the quiet that enveloped the hallway. There was a sense that something was just beyond the edge of his vision, something he couldn't quite grasp. "Captain Hayes?" A voice broke through his thoughts. It was Lieutenant Arya, a quick-witted officer who had worked alongside Daniel for years. She had a knack for getting to the bottom of things, a talent that had saved them both on more than one occasion. "Yes," Daniel replied, turning toward her. "Are you all right? You look a little off." Her voice held a hint of concern. "I'm fine," Daniel said, trying to shake off the unease that had settled over him. "Just, something doesn't feel right." Lieutenant Arya frowned. "Lady Acilia is fine, Captain. She's just preparing for her meeting. Maybe she's just a little intense." "She's not exactly from around here, you know." Daniel nodded, but his instincts told him that this wasn't just a simple case of nervousness before a big meeting. There was something else, something he couldn't see but could feel deep in his bones. "I'll check back later," he said, though his voice betrayed a hint of doubt. As he turned to leave, he glanced over his shoulder one last time at the closed door. It was as if the room itself was holding its secrets, and Daniel was no longer sure whether he wanted to know what lay beyond. Hours passed. The station's usual hum filled the air, ships coming and going, crew members going about their duties, technicians working to keep the system running smoothly. But as night fell and the lights of Vanguard flickered like distant stars, something in the station shifted. It started with a strange signal, one that came from deep within the station's communications network. A brief burst of static followed by a series of unrecognizable symbols. It was like nothing anyone had ever seen before. Captain Hayes was in the security office when the alert came through. He sat up straight, his military training kicking in as the signal scrambled across his screen. He reached for the controls, trying to decode the message. But the more he tried, the more complicated it became. It wasn't just a malfunction, it was deliberate. Someone had sent the signal, and whoever had done it was far beyond the level of technology the station's crew was accustomed to dealing with. His heart raced as he realized what this meant. Lady Acilia was at the center of it all. She had locked the door, triggered something, and now the entire station was under some kind of threat, whether she intended it or not. Before he could act, the power began to flicker. The lights dimmed, then brightened again, then dimmed once more. It was like the entire station was breathing in and out, its pulse quickening. And with each pulse, the silence grew heavier. There was something here, something waking up. "Captain Hayes," Arya's voice came through again, this time sounding more urgent. "The Kairos cruiser." It's here." Daniel's stomach dropped. The Kairos were not a peaceful race. Their ships were massive, armed to the teeth, and they didn't come to Vanguard for friendly negotiations. They came for one thing, power. The ship was already docked. It had arrived quietly, without warning, as though it had simply appeared out of thin air. No alarms had gone off, no communication had been received. It was just there, hanging in the void outside the station like a silent predator. The Kairos had arrived. Daniel's mind raced. What did this mean? Why was the Kairos cruiser here? And why had Lady Acilia locked herself away? He knew one thing for sure, the game had changed. And it was far from over. He had to find Lady Acilia. He had to understand what she had done. But when he reached her quarters again, the door was wide open. This time there was no hum, no pulse, nothing. Lady Acilia was gone. Daniel stepped into the room, his boots making a soft echo against the cold metal floor. The room was neat, meticulously arranged. But there was no sign of the woman he had been sent to protect. Just the faint scent of something he couldn't place, a metallic tang mixed with a floral fragrance that lingered in the air. He knelt down, his eyes scanning the floor. And then he saw it, just a small, almost insignificant detail. A symbol, the symbol from the strange signal. It was etched into the floor, tiny, hidden, almost like it had been left there on purpose. But why? Before he could investigate further, the station's emergency alarms went off, loud and jarring. The message that had been sent earlier was no longer a mystery. It was a warning. "They are awake!" Daniel's blood ran cold as the realization hit him. What had Lady Acilia done? What had she set in motion? And most importantly, who else knew about it? The answers were just beyond his reach, but one thing was clear: he had to act fast. Because the Vanguard was no longer a safe place. The tension on the Vanguard grew with every passing second. Captain Daniel Hayes paced the narrow corridor outside the command center, his mind racing as he tried to make sense of everything that was happening. The Kairos cruiser, which had mysteriously appeared without warning, loomed in the void of space just outside the station. Its dark silhouette against the stars was an ominous sight. It didn't belong here, nothing about it was right. The station's internal systems were acting up, their usual hum replaced by an unsettling silence. Daniel had tried contacting the Kairos cruiser, but all communication attempts had failed. The cruiser was locked in a dead signal zone, as if something was blocking the usual channels. The mysterious distress signal that had flashed across the galaxy earlier made more sense now, but it only raised more questions. What had Lady Acilia done? Why was her disappearance timed with the arrival of the Kairos warship? Daniel's thoughts were interrupted by the shrill buzz of his comm device. He picked it up quickly, trying to steady his nerves. "Captain Hayes," came the voice of Lieutenant Arya, her tone tense. "We've just detected an energy pulse, something powerful. It came from inside the station. We can't pinpoint the source, but it's unlike anything we've seen before." Daniel's heart skipped a beat. The Kairos were known for their advanced technology, and their ships had strange energy capabilities, but this wasn't the cruiser. This was something inside the Vanguard. He clenched his jaw, feeling the weight of his responsibility. "Track the pulse," he said firmly, even though he knew it wouldn't be easy. "And get everyone to their posts. I want all areas of the station monitored. If anyone sees Lady Acilia, contact me immediately." He moved quickly, heading to the command center where the station's senior officers were gathered. The tension in the room was thick, and Daniel could feel the anxiety rolling off the other officers. No one knew what was going on, and that made them all nervous. "Captain," said Commander Jalen, a grizzled veteran who had served on the Vanguard for over a decade. His eyes were narrowed in concentration as he watched the various screens in front of him. "The cruiser's crew has begun to mobilize. They're docking with the station, but they're not responding to our hails. This isn't a diplomatic visit. We're dealing with something much more dangerous." Daniel nodded grimly. "I know, keep trying to reach them. I'm going to check the sensor logs myself. We have to find out what triggered that pulse." As Daniel moved to the sensor station, his mind wandered back to Lady Acilia. What had happened to her? Why had she locked herself away in that room, and why had she triggered something inside the station? He knew she wasn't just an innocent diplomat. There was something more to her, something that connected her to the Kairos in a way that no one had understood. The truth was out there, but it was slipping further from his grasp with every passing moment. He tapped a few commands into the console, pulling up the station's sensor data. The readings were all over the place, but one thing stood out: a strange, pulsing energy signature that seemed to originate from the deepest levels of the Vanguard. It wasn't a malfunction. It was something intentional, something designed to send a signal. Whoever had triggered it knew exactly what they were doing. The pulse repeated again, a low hum that rattled the walls. This time, Daniel felt it in his chest, a vibration that seemed to come from the very heart of the station. Something was awakening. But what? Captain, Arya's voice came through again, her words tense. "The pulse is moving. It's heading toward the lower levels. The systems are locking down. Something been triggered." "Locking down?" Daniel repeated, his pulse quickening. "How?" "Security doors, Captain. Everything below level 7 is sealed off. We can't access the lower levels unless we override the system, and I don't think that's going to be easy." Daniel took a deep breath, trying to keep his cool. The lower levels of the Vanguard were rarely used. They were mostly maintenance and storage areas far from the public sections of the station. But those lower levels held something important. That much was clear now. "Get a team together," he ordered. "We're going down there. We need to figure out what's causing this. Arya, stay in contact with me. We'll need all the information we can get." With his orders given, Daniel quickly gathered a team of security officers, all seasoned in handling unexpected situations. They suited up, their faces grim as they checked their weapons and equipment. As they moved toward the nearest elevator, Daniel's mind raced. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were running out of time. Whatever was happening, it was happening now. The elevator descended quickly, the lights flickering as they passed each level. The deeper they went, the heavier the air seemed. By the time they reached level 7, the whole station felt different. The usual hustle and bustle of station life were gone. The lights above them flickered and hummed with an eerie energy, casting long shadows across the walls. The sense of unease grew stronger the further down they went. When the doors opened, Daniel and his team stepped into the dimly lit corridors of the lower levels. The smell of old machinery and dust hung in the air. It was quiet here, too quiet, as though the station itself was holding its breath. They moved through the corridors, carefully checking each door and every corner. The usual station security cameras were offline, leaving them in the dark about what lay ahead. But they could feel it, a strange energy that pulsed through the walls, like a heartbeat from somewhere deep below them. As they reached the next security door, Daniel motioned for his team to stop. He approached the control panel, and after a few tense moments, he managed to override the lock. The door hissed open, and they stepped into the chamber beyond. The room was cold, far colder than the rest of the station. There was a metallic scent in the air, and the walls seemed to pulse with an unnatural light. In the center of the room stood a large, ancient-looking structure, an artifact unlike anything Daniel had ever seen before. It was tall, covered in strange symbols that glowed faintly in the dim light. The energy signature from the sensor logs was emanating from it, stronger now that they were close. "This is it," Daniel muttered under his breath, his heart pounding in his chest. This was the source of the pulse, the reason for the station's sudden lockdown. But what was it? And why was it here? The artifact seemed to hum in response to their presence, the energy building in intensity. It was as if it had been waiting for them. Suddenly a voice echoed through the chamber, soft but clear. "You should not have come here, Captain." Daniel spun around, his hand instinctively going to his weapon. The voice was familiar, yet he couldn't place it at first. And then it hit him, Lady Acilia. She had found them. She was standing at the far side of the room, her figure outlined by the strange, flickering light from the artifact. Lady Acilia, Daniel said, his voice a mix of disbelief and frustration. What is this? What have you done? She stepped forward, her eyes fixed on him, her expression unreadable. I've done nothing, she said softly. I merely opened the door that should have remained closed, and now it is too late to stop what has already begun. Daniel's mind raced. The artifact, the energy pulse, the Kairos cruiser, it was all connected. But what did she mean? What had she done? You're playing with forces you don't understand, Daniel said, trying to keep his voice steady. This isn't just about diplomacy. This is about power. You've awakened something dangerous. Lady Acilia's eyes softened for a moment, but her voice remained steady. It's not about power, Captain. It's about survival. The Kairos Empire has hidden this from the galaxy for millennia, but now the time has come for it to be known. Daniel took a step closer, his eyes narrowing. And what does that mean for the rest of us? For the first time, a small, almost sad smile crossed her lips. It means everything will change. The galaxy will never be the same again. The chamber around Daniel was silent except for the soft hum of the artifact. The air felt thick, almost electric, and a strange pressure seemed to push in from all sides. Lady Acilia's words hung in the air, heavy with meaning, and Daniel struggled to comprehend what she had just said. The galaxy will never be the same again, she had said, her eyes unwavering, her voice almost sorrowful. What did that mean? What had she uncovered in this dark chamber? And what was the artifact that now seemed to pulse with power in the center of the room? Lady Acilia's calm presence stood in stark contrast to the chaos unfolding outside the chamber. The station's lights flickered again, casting shadows that twisted like ghosts along the walls. Daniel's hand tightened on the grip of his sidearm, but he knew there was no use in drawing it now. This was no simple diplomatic mission gone wrong. This was something far larger than he had ever imagined. What is this? Daniel demanded again, his voice rough with frustration. Why is it here? Why now? Lady Acilia took a step toward the artifact, her gaze fixed on it as if she could see something beyond its glowing symbols. It's the legacy of my people, Captain, she said softly. The Kairos Empire has been hiding it for millennia, but it is time to unlock its power. We have run out of time. Daniel's mind raced, trying to make sense of her words. This wasn't just an object. It was a key to something vast, something that could alter the course of the galaxy itself. He knew the Kairos were an advanced race, their empire spanning thousands of systems. But what was it that they had hidden from the rest of the galaxy? And why had Lady Acilia, the very daughter of the Kairos Emperor, been sent here to the vanguard to unleash it? What are you talking about? Daniel asked, his voice low and demanding. What exactly does this legacy mean? And why did you lock yourself away in that room? Was it all part of the plan? Lady Acilia glanced at him, her expression unreadable. It wasn't supposed to be like this, she murmured. I wasn't supposed to bring you into this, but now it's too late. The artifact is awakening, and the rest of the galaxy needs to be prepared. Daniel could feel the weight of her words, but it only made him more suspicious. She wasn't telling him everything. There was more to this than just a simple legacy. The Kairos were powerful, but what had they hidden here beneath the station's surface? He stepped closer, keeping his eyes fixed on the artifact. The glowing symbols were shifting now, moving as if alive, their light pulsating in time with the thrum of the station's power systems. He could feel it too, something pulling at him, a sensation deep within his chest, like an unseen force was calling to him. Lady Acilia, he said, his voice tight, you need to explain everything. We're not just talking about a political power shift. There's something here that could destroy us all. What's really at stake? For a moment, Lady Acilia didn't respond. She stood motionless, her eyes closed, her face tense. When she finally spoke again, it was in a voice barely above a whisper. You wouldn't understand, she said. None of you would. The Kairos have always been a species of balance. We've learned to live with the power that courses through our veins to control it. But this artifact, it is not just power. It is the beginning of something new, something that will change the entire galaxy. We've kept it hidden for millennia because we feared what might happen if it was discovered. But now the time has come. My father, the Emperor, knew this day would come. He knew the galaxy would one day have to face the truth. Daniel's head spun. The Kairos, a race so advanced and secretive, had been hiding this artifact, whatever it was, for thousands of years. And now, Lady Acilia was the one to unlock it. He could sense her deep connection to it, as if she were bound to it in a way that went beyond mere duty. There was something personal about this, something she was keeping hidden. "You're not telling me everything," Daniel said sharply. "What is this artifact really capable of?" Lady Acilia turned her gaze toward him, and for the first time he saw something more than a diplomat's mask in her eyes. There was fear there. Fear and regret. "It's capable of destroying everything," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "But it's also capable of recreating it. My people have learned to harness its power, but it wasn't meant for us. It was meant for the galaxy. The Kairos Empire built it as a tool, an ultimate weapon, yes, but also a solution to a galaxy in chaos. It can reshape the fabric of reality itself, bend time and space. It can give birth to new worlds, erase old ones." Daniel's heart raced. This wasn't just a weapon, it was an instrument of unimaginable power. He had heard rumors of such devices, ancient artifacts lost to time, but never had he imagined one would be so close. "You can't control something like that," he said, his voice harsh. "No one can. If you let that thing loose, it will tear everything apart." Lady Acilia shook her head slowly. "That's where you're wrong, Captain. My people have learned to control it. We've controlled it for centuries. But now we can no longer keep it hidden. It must be used. It's the only way to save the galaxy from itself." "Save it?" Daniel asked, disbelief flooding his voice. "By destroying it, by changing reality itself." Lady Acilia's gaze hardened. "Yes, the galaxy is at a breaking point. Empires are collapsing and new ones are rising. The balance is slipping. My father and I, we saw it coming. That's why we hid this artifact away. The Kairos Empire was never meant to last forever. It was always meant to be a stepping stone, a part of a larger plan." Daniel took a step back, his mind reeling. The implications of her words were staggering. She wasn't just talking about political power. She was talking about remaking the galaxy from the ground up. It was a vision so big, so all-encompassing, that Daniel could barely comprehend it. Could the Kairos really have the right to reshape everything? Was that what Lady Acilia believed? That this power, this ancient artifact, was the solution to everything that was wrong with the galaxy? Before he could respond, the walls of the chamber seemed to vibrate. The humming of the artifact grew louder and the lights overhead flickered erratically. Something was happening, something the station wasn't prepared for. Daniel's fingers hovered over his weapon, but he didn't draw it. There was no time for that. They were running out of time. "The artifact is reacting," Lady Acilia said quietly, her voice tense. "It's drawing energy from the station. I've tried to control it, but I can't. It's too powerful." "Then stop it," Daniel demanded. "If you can't control it, then shut it down." "I can't," she said, her voice breaking. "It's too late for that now. The Kairos Empire, my father, he wanted this to happen. This is the point of no return." Daniel's mind raced as he realized the truth. This was no ordinary political crisis. This was the start of something far more dangerous, something that could unravel the entire galaxy. "We need to evacuate," he said urgently. "Now, before it's too late." But Lady Acilia didn't move. She remained rooted in place, her eyes locked on the artifact. She was no longer the calm, composed diplomat he had once thought her to be. She was something else now, something tied to this power in a way that Daniel could never understand. "We can't leave," she said softly. "The artifact will never let us." Daniel's stomach turned. The artifact wasn't just a device of power. It was alive in some sense. It was controlling them, pulling them into its orbit. And if Lady Acilia couldn't stop it, then no one could. As the station's lights flickered one last time, a terrible silence fell over them. The future of the galaxy was hanging in the balance, and everything was about to change. They were running out of time, and soon there would be no turning back. The air inside the chamber felt electric, as if the walls themselves were alive, vibrating with the power of the artifact. Daniel stood frozen, watching Lady Acilia. She had once seemed like a calm, controlled diplomat, but now there was something else in her eyes, something desperate and lost. She wasn't just a leader of the Kairos Empire. She was a part of the very force that threatened to tear everything apart. "Lady Acilia," Daniel said, his voice firm but filled with concern. "You have to stop this. If you don't, everything will be destroyed." She didn't look at him. Her eyes were fixed on the artifact, her body stiff with the energy it was giving off. It was as if she could sense the power coursing through it, and she wasn't sure how to stop it. She had called it a legacy, but now Daniel could see the weight of her words. This wasn't just a weapon or a tool, it was something far more dangerous, something beyond anyone's control. "I can't stop it," Lady Acilia said quietly, her voice breaking. "It's too late, the artifact is part of me now, we are bound together." "Then what do you want me to do?" Daniel demanded, frustration building inside him. "You brought us here, you triggered this, you knew what it would do, didn't you?" Her head snapped toward him, her eyes wide with a mixture of sadness and regret. "I didn't want this, Captain. I didn't want any of this, but my father. He was always preparing for this moment. The artifact was never meant to stay hidden. It was meant to be used. It's the only way to save the galaxy." Daniel shook his head, disbelief in his voice. "By destroying it. By reshaping everything. That's not salvation, Lady Acilia, that's madness." She stepped closer to him, her expression softening. "I don't want to do this, but my father always believed that the galaxy was doomed. Empires rise and fall, species destroy themselves over and over again. The artifact can bring balance, it can correct the chaos. It's the only way to prevent another war, another collapse." "And what if it causes even more chaos?" Daniel countered, his voice tight. "What if this artifact destroys everything we've worked for? What if it destroys us?" Lady Acilia's face darkened. "If it doesn't, we will all be swept away by the tides of time. The galaxy can't keep going like this. The wars, the destruction, it's all part of a cycle that can't be broken. The artifact can break that cycle, Captain. It can end it." Daniel didn't know what to say. The magnitude of her words was overwhelming, and the reality of the situation settled deeper in his chest. The artifact wasn't just a powerful weapon. It was a key to something far more terrifying. The ability to reshape the galaxy, to bend time, space, and reality itself. And Lady Acilia, the daughter of the Kairos Emperor, was the one who had triggered it. The humming of the artifact grew louder, vibrating through the floor and into Daniel's bones. The entire station seemed to shudder, as if it too were aware of the power being unleashed. The lights flickered once more, the station's systems struggling to keep up with the growing energy. It was clear, something was about to happen. "We don't have much time," Daniel said, taking a step back. His eyes were wide with realization. "We have to stop this now. If the artifact is what you say it is, we can't let it go any further." Lady Acilia looked at him, her face etched with uncertainty. "And how do you propose we stop it? You can't just destroy it. The artifact is more than a thing, it's the future." "Then I'll make sure it doesn't have a future," Daniel said with determination. "I don't care if it's the key to saving the galaxy. If it's going to destroy everything we've fought for, it has to be stopped." The ground beneath them trembled slightly as the artifact's energy surged. A soft but persistent hum began to echo throughout the station, a sound that reverberated like a deep, unsettling pulse. Daniel turned to the door, his thoughts racing. They had to act fast before the artifact's power overwhelmed the station. "Where are you going?" Lady Acilia called after him, her voice filled with fear. "I'm going to destroy the artifact," Daniel replied without looking back. "It's the only way to stop this." He ran through the corridors of the lower levels, his mind focused on the one thing that could save them all, the artifact's core. If he could somehow disable it, sever the connection it had to the station, they might stand a chance. But every step he took felt like he was walking deeper into danger. The artifact's energy was everywhere, flowing through the walls, through the very air. It was as if the station itself was a part of the artifact now, intertwined and inseparable. The halls seemed longer than they should have been, the shadows stretching as the power surged through the station. It was becoming harder to breathe, as if the very atmosphere was thick with energy, pulling him toward the artifact. He forced himself to keep moving, pushing aside the sense of dread that clawed at his mind. There was no time for hesitation. When he reached the control room, he saw that his team had already arrived. Lieutenant Arya stood by the console, her face grim as she watched the station's systems struggle to stay online. "We've tried everything, Captain," Arya said, turning to face him. "The artifact is overriding our systems. We can't shut it down." Daniel's eyes narrowed as he looked at the screens. The artifact's energy signature was still growing, its power reaching new heights with each passing moment. The station's hull was beginning to show signs of stress, metal creaking, the outer shields flickering in and out of existence. If they didn't act now, the vanguard would be torn apart. There's got to be a way, Daniel muttered, moving toward the control panel. He punched in a series of commands, but nothing worked. The artifact was too powerful, its energy blocking any attempts to shut it down. "We need to get to the artifact's core," he said after a moment, his voice steady despite the rising panic in his chest. "If we can cut the power at its source, we might have a chance," Arya nodded. "We've been trying to get there, but the lower levels are locked down. The artifact is manipulating the station's security systems." Daniel's heart raced. The situation was growing more dire by the second. "Then we're going to have to override it ourselves. Let's move." They made their way toward the elevator shaft, the building tension in the air almost palpable. The walls seemed to close in around them as the artifact's power intensified, shaking the very foundations of the vanguard. Every step felt like it was bringing them closer to the edge of destruction. As the elevator doors slid open, they were met with a deafening roar. The station was shaking violently now, as if it were about to fall apart. Daniel's team held onto the railings, trying to keep steady as the tremors worsened. "Hold on," Daniel shouted over the noise. "We're almost there." They descended deeper into the station's core, the ground beneath their feet trembling with each passing moment. The artifact's power surged again, this time sending a shockwave through the walls. The lights flickered wildly, casting eerie shadows across the hall. When they finally reached the lower levels, they found themselves in the heart of the station. The artifact's core was located in the center of a massive chamber, its energy radiating outward in waves. The room was filled with a soft, pulsating light, and the walls seemed to be alive, shifting with the rhythm of the artifact. "This is it," Daniel said, his voice tight with determination. "We have to shut it down." But as he approached the core, he realized something terrifying. The artifact wasn't just a machine, it was a living entity. Its energy wasn't just harnessed power, it was conscious, aware of their presence, and it was already reacting to them. "No," Lady Acilia's voice rang out behind them. "You can't destroy it." "You don't understand what you're doing." Daniel turned to face her, his eyes hard. "I understand perfectly. You were willing to let this thing destroy everything just to bring balance. I won't let that happen." Lady Acilia stood in the doorway, her face pale. She looked as though she were fighting with herself, torn between the power of the artifact and the need to stop it. But she couldn't. "You don't know what you're doing," she shouted again, her voice cracking. "The artifact will punish you. It will." But before she could finish, the energy around them exploded, throwing everyone back. The artifact roared, its light blinding and intense. The room shook violently, and for a moment Daniel thought everything was lost. And then, as quickly as it had begun, the room fell silent. The artifact's light dimmed, the pulsing energy fading away. The station, though battered, had survived. They had done it. But as Daniel looked back at Lady Acilia, he knew that this victory was only temporary. The galaxy would never be the same again. The silence in the chamber was overwhelming. After the blinding explosion of light and energy, everything had gone quiet. The station's systems were still flickering, struggling to maintain any sort of stability. The hum of the artifact, which had dominated the air for so long, was now gone. But even in its absence, Daniel felt a strange weight settle into the pit of his stomach. It wasn't over, not yet. Lady Acilia lay on the floor, her body limp. Daniel rushed toward her, his heart pounding in his chest. She had been thrown back by the energy blast, and for a moment he feared she was dead. But as he knelt beside her, he could see her chest rising and falling, faint but steady. She was alive. "Lady Acilia," Daniel said, gently shaking her shoulder. "Can you hear me?" Her eyelids fluttered open, and she groaned softly, her eyes dazed. When she saw him, she blinked a few times as if trying to focus. I failed." Her voice was weak, filled with regret. "No," Daniel said, shaking his head. "You didn't fail, you stopped it. We all did." Lady Acilia's gaze shifted toward the now dormant artifact, its eerie glow fading away into nothingness. It looked so ordinary now, just a dark, silent object in the middle of the room. But Daniel knew better. The power it had contained, the destruction it had almost unleashed, was still fresh in his mind. "I didn't want this to happen," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I didn't want to bring this upon you, Captain. But it was never supposed to be in my hands. I didn't choose this path." Daniel helped her sit up, his hand steadying her. "You didn't know what would happen," he said quietly. "None of us did, but you made the right choice in the end." She looked at him, and for the first time, Daniel saw a flicker of something other than sadness in her eyes, something like hope. I wanted to believe it could fix everything, but now I see how much damage it could have caused. It was too powerful. I should have never trusted it. None of us really understand the true cost of power until it's too late, Daniel replied. His words came from experience, though he had never wielded such power as the Kairos had. He had seen power destroy lives, civilizations, and entire worlds. He had been a part of that destruction too many times, but this was different. This was the galaxy on the edge of ruin. The sound of footsteps echoed from behind them. Daniel turned to find Lieutenant Arya and the rest of his team entering the chamber. They had survived the blast, but the toll of the artifact's power was evident in their eyes. They had all seen something that had shaken them to their core. "We're all clear, Captain," Arya said, her voice tight with exhaustion. "The artifact's power is gone. The station's systems are stabilizing, but it's going to take time to repair the damage. We've lost a lot of data from the lower levels." "Good," Daniel replied. "We're alive, and that's what matters. We'll rebuild, and we'll make sure this never happens again." He turned back to Lady Acilia, still sitting on the floor. Her gaze was distant, lost in thought. "I didn't realize how far gone the galaxy was," she said, her voice trembling. "I thought the Kairos were the only ones who could save it, but now I see that we're just as lost as everyone else." Daniel knelt beside her, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "The galaxy isn't beyond saving, but it's up to the people in it to choose a better way. You don't have to carry the weight of this alone anymore. There's a way forward, but it's not through power. It's through unity, through working together." Lady Acilia looked up at him, her expression still clouded with regret. "I wish I had known that sooner. I thought that if I could control the artifact, I could fix everything. But I see now that you're right. The power to change the galaxy doesn't come from a single object. It comes from the choices we make." The words seemed to lift a little of the weight off her shoulders. She had been carrying the burden of the artifact's legacy for so long, believing that it held the answers to the galaxy's problems. But now, she understood that no single power, no artifact or weapon could provide the solution. The solution lay in the hands of the people, the individuals who had the strength to come together, to choose peace over war, collaboration over conflict. Daniel's team began to move toward the exit, preparing to leave the chamber. The mission was over, but the work ahead was just beginning. The Vanguard might have survived the crisis, but the galaxy was still in turmoil. Empires still fought for control, and the threat of war still loomed over every system. The scars of the past were deep, but perhaps, for the first time in a long while, there was hope that the future could be different. As Daniel helped Lady Acilia to her feet, he felt a sense of resolution that had been missing for a long time. The galaxy had survived this trial, but it wasn't just about survival. It was about change. It was about choosing a better path. "Where will you go now?" Daniel asked quietly, his eyes meeting hers. She stood tall, though her steps were slower, heavier. "I don't know. I'll have to return to my father eventually, but not yet. I have a lot to think about. The Kairos Empire has always been about power, but I've seen what happens when power goes unchecked. I need to find my own way forward." "I hope you do," Daniel said, a small, sincere smile tugging at his lips. "We all do." They stood there for a moment in the quiet aftermath of what had nearly destroyed them. The walls of the Vanguard station had stopped shaking, and the power of the artifact had finally faded. But the echoes of what had happened would last forever, shaping the future of the galaxy in ways no one could predict. As Lady Acilia turned and walked toward the exit, Daniel remained behind for a moment, staring at the artifact. It was nothing now. A cold, lifeless object, its power gone. But for a moment, Daniel thought he could still feel its presence, still hear the hum of its energy, the whisper of the devastation it had almost caused. It was a reminder of how fragile the galaxy was, how close they had come to losing it all. But as the station's systems began to stabilize, Daniel felt a renewed sense of purpose. The Vanguard was not just a symbol of power, it was a symbol of hope. Hope that even after the darkest moments, there was always a chance for a new beginning. He turned to leave the chamber, stepping into the corridor where his team was waiting. The work ahead would be difficult. There were still factions vying for control, still old grudges to settle. But Daniel knew one thing for sure: the galaxy would survive. And as long as there were people like Lady Acilia, people who could recognize the importance of change, of choosing unity over power, the galaxy might just have a chance at a brighter future. As he walked back to the command center, his mind was clear. The war for the future of the galaxy had just begun, but it would not be fought with weapons or artifacts. It would be fought with choices. And Daniel Hayes, once a soldier of war, was now ready to fight for the future of peace.